I kind of compare it to smart contracts to like having your banking APIs exposed to the internet. You know, like everyone can call them, and sometimes, like in a smart contract, you forget to put like a only owner modifier on it, and then they just literally just like withdraw your money. Just some random guy just comes along and just takes money out of your account. Like things like that still happen like to this day. Um, it just kind of boggles my mind. Like some of the small projects I've seen, the hacks are just like so trivial. It's literally like
Yeah, they just
maybe
missed. They didn't put a modifier or something on a function or like something very trivial.
yeah, exactly. It's kind of like cybersecurity in the '90s maybe, because back then it was like people leaving default creds on the internet and then you just like log in and then steal their data or whatever. And now it's kind of like that same situation with the smart contracts. Like so many just trivial hacks getting, like people losing millions of dollars from these hacks.
Yeah, yeah, it's very very early and very trivial hacks a lot of times. Sometimes there are more complex hacks like cross bridge hacks of like advanced hacks, but yeah, most of them are complex, which, like you said, reminds me of like the early of Web3 when it was very easy. You just put a comma and you have an SQL injection, or you just like put like a script tags and they don't even check, and that's it. You have your alert, you steal the cookie of the user. So that's how it feels now with Web3 when now you have all this kind of sanitation mechanism built in the languages, in the libraries, in the frameworks themselves, right? But it's harder to make mistakes now. In like there are still like hacks in Web3, and if it's like web applications, because eventually every program is vulnerable because it's being written by people. We are the ones who make the mistake. That it's not a programming language problem, but it's also we design the programming language and we design the algorithms. So it's just people making mistakes most of the times. And yeah, we are very early, and the impact is huge, 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 more than Web 2, because there is money involved in every hack, a lot of money involved, and no more than an exposed API of a bank, because there is no way to revert it most of the times. Sometimes, some of the smart contracts are more centralized. The team has these kind of upgradability options, or like ownership, ownable and posable contracts, all these kind of things, which is like another step in decentralization in Web3. Like centralized exchanges, centralized DeFi products, completely decentralized DeFi products, ruled by the governance and the DAO or whatever. So this is like a process. And yeah, sometimes the team can like revert the hack, or restore some funds, and sometimes that's it. If it's like too decentralized, you cannot have all at once. You cannot be truly decentralized, and once something bad happens, if code is the law, code is really the law. That's it. The funds are lost. So it's like the trade-off between like centralization, where you can like when something goes wrong, revive it, to completely decentralization. The trade-off is like that once something goes wrong, everything goes wrong.
Yeah. I did an interview with 100 Proof where he found a bounty worth 150K on Immunify. And what he said was, we kind of live in a very unique time in history where you can be a enthusiastic, medium level sort of security person to be able to make exceptional amounts of money, but you have to be um, like insanely skilled in Web 2 to make the equivalent amount. There's just more impact here in Web 3 at the moment.
Yes, because the bug bounties are so high, and yeah, it's a stage. I think it's a stage. There is a lot of money on the stake, which you can understand why there is a lot of demand for security researchers and hackers. And at the same time, you don't have that many people who understand how blockchains works and how EVM and Solidity and Cosmos works. So it's like in traditional market situation, there is a lot of demand and very low supply, especially when these concepts are very complex and hard to grasp, even especially if you're a beginner. If you don't have any technical background, it's very hard to make it to start from smart contract development and smart contract hacking. You still, at least you have to have some experience in like prior development experience or a prior cybersecurity experience, or your journey will be a bit longer. But you don't have that many people that understand how blockchain works. On top of that, you don't have many people who understand how Ethereum and Solidity and EVM works. On top of that, you don't have many people that understand all the security problems that Ethereum and Solidity has, which makes it like very, very narrow talent pool. And I have a lot of friends from traditional cybersecurity, and I'll tell them that I'm doing Web3 security, Web3 hacking, and they're telling me, yeah, Bitcoin stuff, right? And I was like, no, there is so much more than that, you know? And they don't even know they're doing like malware analysis and like reverse engineering, but they're not even aware that there is this kind of world of Web3 where every Monday and every Thursday there is $100 million up. If they would know, I do believe that they would either quit the job and just go and learn it, or so I'm that's what I'm like talking with them like, bro, you didn't know that yesterday $100 million were stolen from smart contracts? Like, what, really? Yeah, it's like there are like everyday hacks, you know, and there is a lot of talent there in traditional cybersecurity. And I believe that more talent will come to Web3. It will be challenging to do this kind of shift from Web2 to Web3, but eventually you will see more security professionals, cybersecurity professionals comes into the space and helping to secure it. And yeah, I want to take part in this. You know, I see the stage now, how hell it is and how it's gonna change. And it brings a lot of opportunities if it's like bug bounty hunting or super high salaries. You know, as a security auditor in Spearbit, I watched the interview. I loved it with 100 Proof. So you talked a bit about salaries, which are insanely higher, and bug bounties are higher. And yeah, the more there will be more demand, obviously the prices will go down, and also the expenses for Web3 projects will be lower because there will be more demand, but we are not there yet.
Yeah, I think a lot of Web 2 people, they either don't understand it or don't want to understand it, or they just think the whole space is full of like scammy shit coins.
Exactly.
I was kind of in that same place. Like, I thought the whole space was just like scammy Ponzi scheme, and I didn't want to. I just didn't want to know about it, you know, until I sort of got exposed to the space from a security perspective and approached it. In that frame of mind was when I started to find the space interesting. And yeah, I think you're right. Like, slowly more people will come to Web3 security from Web 2. And there is a lot of opportunity for those like high level people to switch over as well. Like, I don't know if you've been on Code Arena, the bug bounties there. Like I've noticed recently, like some very like high level people just popped out of nowhere and started just crushing the leaderboard, like earning 10K a week on Code Arena. And I had a look at some of their like blogs and stuff. They came from like a very advanced exploit development, a kind of traditional cybersecurity background. And I was surprised like how quickly some of those guys were able to transition their skills into Web3, which I'm not at that level in Web 2, but you know, it's still like, for me, it only took me like maybe 6 months to 9 months or so of self-learning to sort of get to that base level where I'm able to find a job as a smart contract auditor. So it doesn't like take that long to transition, like not as long as a lot of people think.
Yeah, definitely the more experience you have in tech and development and cybersecurity, it will be easier to do this kind of shift. And of course, when someone is doing, let's say, vulnerability research for 5 years and is just like so skilled and looking at programs and how they work and how to break them, and sometimes it's very advanced programs, because when someone is searching for a vulnerability in iOS, let's say, he doesn't get a source code of Apple. He just go and reverse engineers and fuzz the shit out of it until he like finds a memory leak or like a bug where he can inject his code, his like I don't know, his shell code. And now it's simpler when you get a source code. You know, when you see like you just need to learn Solidity, and when you do like contest on Code4Arena, it's like a white. All this kind of auditing, if you think about it, it's like white box. From traditional cybersecurity, it's not like black box, because once you hack a web server, you don't know the code that there is in the backend. Or once you hack, I don't know, you find vulnerability in Microsoft, in Windows operating system, you don't have the source code. You have only the binaries. You need to reverse engineer it. You need to read assembly. You need to fuzz like all these kind of inputs. And here in Solidity, it's like open source. It's white box. So I think that for these people that did like black box vulnerability research, when they come to Solidity, it's like bread and butter. You know, it's a piece of cake. It's easier for them to adapt, because they already have the attacker mindset. They are already adjusted to look at like program and like try, and they have also the success, like they found vulnerabilities in their life. So that's why I think you see this kind of people like killing it in Code4Arena. But imagine that maybe these people can also find vulnerabilities like smart contracts that are not open source, because there are not a lot of contracts. Most of the big projects that have like big amount of money, TVL, total value locked, mostly the smart contracts are verified. They have like the GitHub repository open, but some project have millions of dollars and the code is not even open. You know, the contract is in Etherscan, but it's only bytecodes. And these guys that you are talking about, they're used to this kind of, to read these bytecodes, this assembly code, and try to hack this kind of code. So
Yeah. Those reverse engineering skills will 100% come in handy when it comes to reversing bytecode and that kind of stuff. And also, I think we mentioned like the smart contract security is very complex, but in a way, it's actually less complex because, as you said, it's open source. You can look at the source code, and the source code is short, like really, really short compared to like traditional programs, right? It's only like, you can see projects that's like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 lines of code, and you can build very complex systems with just like 3,000 lines of Solidity code. And even in those 3,000 lines, there are tons of vulnerabilities, and you don't even have to like review that many lines of code to find the vulnerabilities. It's like, it's so dense, you know. So in a way, it's like simpler. I don't know, like in a way simpler, in a way it's more complex, and I think it's more easier to find like an insanely high bug bounty paying like over $1 million in Web3 compared to Web2. Like if you're doing exploit development work in Web2, and you have to like make a whole exploit chain, right? And then you probably need people who are specialized in each part of the chain, and then combine them together to get like an RCE on Android or Apple or something like that. But in Web3, you just have one dude just comes along and just like finds $1 million bug in like, you know, like these massive projects. I don't know, like, is it really more difficult? It's kind of hard to say, right?
it's just different. It's different, and there is not that many people who are doing that. That's why we are early, and I think this is the reason we have this kind of opportunities. Yeah, and like you said, it's funny. Like it's the much shorter code, which is supposed to be simpler, but the way Solidity and EVM works, that it's deterministic and it's like transaction based. Like it's a different concept if you think about it, because you cannot like run automatically tasks. It's a different way of programming, because like it's a transactions that triggers a function in smart contract, which then these smart contracts have connections with other smart contracts. A lot of smart contracts might be, and it's like a different thing, you know. It's like it has its own world where it operates and it moves assets, and then it has like ERC20 tokens, which is like a completely different smart contract. And these ERC20 tokens are sometimes unexpected because every ERC20 token is different. So when you build something that works with ERC tokens, and the developer expects that the ERC token will be having a way X, suddenly there is one ERC token that behaves in way Y. That's why it's more complicated, because there is a lot of things that are out of your control, right? If you're creating a staking app that supports like, I don't know, like ERC20 tokens, you're like, yeah, it should work as I expect. But then there comes this kind of ERC tokens that you add support in the protocol that you didn't read its code. And this one function that has in this ERC20 token fucks up the whole system, the whole staking system. So it's like, it's also more complicated because it's not only these 2,000 line of codes, but it's like re-entrancy attacks and tokens, contracts, and upgradability, and a whole front-running thing that a lot of new concepts that developers don't think about. And it's like easy to think about it like, hey, it's only 2,000 line of codes and that's it. No, but it operates in the whole blockchain system that is very unexpected and is very changing all the time. And what 100 his nickname is like 100th proof. I don't remember. In the previous interview, what he said is like he found a bug in Notional that no one saw in audits because it's like an evolution that the state is changing and the state is dependent on like suddenly a flash loan that he could take from Aave and manipulate the whole system. That's why it's more complex. That's why it's different. And that's why it's more interesting.
Yeah, it's the interaction between other sort of protocols. Yeah, that's what makes it complicated. And I guess there's less standardization as well in this space. Like we have some standards coming through, like with Open Zeppelin, but it's still growing, right? It's still slow progress, and I think it will get better over time as people start to learn and follow these types of standards.
Yeah, it's a wild west right now, but if you think about it, still the progress that we made so far is pretty impressive, you know, because back then when I learned first time on Ethereum in 2017, I was like, what the hell is Ethereum? What am I doing with it? And now we have like all kinds of DeFi apps of lending and borrowing and leveraging and options trading and index funds and what's not. So I do think that it's like still like it goes fast, and obviously the security will have to get a pace to keep up with these protocols, because the more money gets into DeFi and to these kind of smart contracts and protocols, the more important it's going to be. And that's our job to make these apps safe, I guess.
Yeah, DeFi has grown so quickly. Like 2015, it was Ethereum just first came out, and then we had like ICOs, and then the next cycle was DeFi. So every like market cycle, we had huge like growth in the types of protocols that has been developed during that market cycle. And yeah, certainly I do foresee there will be more complexity coming into the system, where we are still just kind of catching up to the security implications of the technology that came out like last cycle. So like more vulnerability is going to come, and yeah, we're doing like a lot of catch-up work here essentially.
Oh, definitely, because if you think about it, Ethereum has like if you think like of the 7 layers of like the network layers, you know, the physical, the network layer, IP layer, all these kind of layers. So Ethereum is like the fundamental, right? Ethereum is like EVM, and Ethereum is like the fundamentals. And then on top of it, you have like smart contracts and nodes and all these kind of things. And Ethereum is changing. And there is suddenly, like on top of Ethereum, ZK rollups and optimistic rollups. And every project has its own implementation. Starknet, for example, and Cairo, a new programming language that is on top of Ethereum with zero knowledge proofs that are being processed on a smart contract on Ethereum. So there are vulnerabilities. So it gets more and more and more and more complex. And so even if like the security advanced, the technology is being more advanced, and the technology is getting more advanced, is being changed, it opens a bunch whole of new security problems.